Hi everybody, Kitsune Haruri here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about my first fursuit head. Yeah, the first one that I made. You haven't seen too much fursuit going on in here. That's because as a first time fursuit head maker, I made some mistakes. And I'm going to share those with you. There's a lot of people out there telling you how to, but there aren't so many people going, be careful of this. You might do that and you aren't going to be happy. But anyway, I'm going to start out with telling you where I come into all this. Many of you know I've been with the furry community probably a good 20 years plus. Here in Ohio, I started out with Morphicon, which is now Anthro, Ohio. I am a regular artist there. And I also have been drawing what would be considered furry or anthropomorphic characters for as far back as I can remember, because that's what we grew up with. You know, we had our pound puppies and our get along gang and all of that sort of stuff. You know, Lion King, that came later for me, but you know, it's still on my repertoire. But anyway, I am, as you well know, a furry, as well as a general otaku. I'm just a nerd. I am the queen of nerdness, okay? Anyway, I'm also an artist, and I like to make my own things. And when I see something that I go, ooh, that's really cool, my first thought isn't how much does it cost, it's, can I do that? Can I make one of those? Who can I torture and put in this thing? So for a long time, me, my friends from college, we did cosplay at the conventions. We still do hall cosplay occasionally, those of us who go. But for the most part, we don't really consider competition anymore. Don't have the energy for that. And now competition's a lot more complicated than when we did it. Now you're spending most of your weekend going toward that goal, because you have to go in and get judged, and you have to do skits, depending on which con you're at. So we used to compete. We actually did pretty good when I was younger and thinner. I made an excellent stun gun Millie from Trigun, because I already looked like her and already had the hair. All I had to do was put on, you know, some khaki slacks, a button-down shirt, a set of suspenders and a tie, and a cup of chocolate pudding, and hey, I was good to go. I also did the her weapon in 1/3 scale, entirely of cardboard. That was fun. That was my first large prop weapon. Really wasn't that big. It was maybe about like this, made out of like toilet paper tubes and all that stuff. You know, me and Amy, she was Meryl. We won. We got most dangerous. I think it was partially because the judges were looking at our toys and turned around and went, bang, 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 we hit the floor. That sort of thing helps, you know, if you're into character. So anyhow, I have an interest in making the costumes. I have an interest in making props especially. And through college, I started out with mask making. We had a gentleman called Bruce Mars come into our college and teach a theatrical stage mask making class. Now these are like the old-fashioned type of masks that you would see on a stage, and I do have a couple of my examples left here. These are really old, 20 plus years again, and have been through some torture, several moves, and unfortunately a bad bout with a steam radiator that kind of gave up and all over them. So they're cracked and they have shrunk, so they're not wearable. But I've got 3 examples of those original masks. Now the originals, when you look at them, yes, these look like they're made out of porcelain or something, but they're not. These are actually made of paper. They are covered with spackle, and then they are painted to have this effect. Now when you're seeing them in person, as they're on somebody's face, they will change expression. First of all, the personality of the person will affect it, because you're seeing their eyes through the holes. And also, the way that they do their movements, which are also a part of their personality, will change the behavior of the mask. So Durzel can be angry, he can be confused, he can be concerned. There's all sorts of points that he hits. This is Durzel, and this is Dillard, and they were done on the same base. You start out with a cast of your own head. No, we do not use alginate. We do not need to know where the pores are on our skin. You need bone structure. If the other details aren't there, they're not necessary. You don't want them anyway because it's just another something to get your clay stuck in. Anyway, you start with your base. You build up clay to get this shape. And then you start building the paper on it and smoothing it into the details. And so it fills in several layers deep. Dry it, spackle it, paint it inside and out to protect it from moisture, and it's good to go. These are really, really old for what they're made of. I tried my best to keep care of them so they would not disintegrate, and I have made some in the past that have been sold, and as far as I know, the owners are still happy with them. But this was way back before we had really good, you know, connections between artists and everything. Once you bought your stuff, you went away, and we don't know what you did with what we made. Kind of makes us worry sometimes, but, you know, take good care of our babies. These two having been made from the same base, certain parts came off when I'm doing this because it's wet clay. You never fire it. You build on top of it, take it off, and you throw it in a bucket of water so it breaks down and you can reconstitute it and reuse it. Low grog porcelain clay to do that. This one, the nose and everything just sort of survived. So I went ahead and did a couple of touch-ups and changes and ended up with these two gentlemen here as brothers. Now, at one time, they were both wider and far less cracked. They fit my face. From that same method, I get little bug eater here. There are a lot of stylized lines, not realistic, but that allowed this mask to have even more expression. Now this one has some damage. You can see it's buckling here and chipping. Again, it's still made of the same paper, and it's more than 20 years old. These weren't meant to be used for long periods of time, because generally if you were running a theater, you did your performance for a certain amount of time, and then you moved on, and you don't have storage for a lot of stuff like this. So if it dies and you throw it away, whatever. You'll make another one. It was cheap. Not so cheap now, but then cheap, you know. But this would have been what you would have seen in the theater all the way back into the Renaissance. Now, we did take these and move forward on that. Sorry about the history lesson, but it's giving you a background of where I'm coming from and why I made my mistakes. I am very good at making masks. I am very much a newbie at making fursuit heads. The next step we could go, doing the same method in the build up to the clay, is a latex cast. This is schnoz. This is a 3/4 mask. This fella can still be worn, though he's shrinking too. Eventually latex will shrink, just from age, because it is so very old. It loses moisture. He used to fit back on my head, now he doesn't. But this is schnoz. And schnoz is intentionally designed after the Italian masks with the long nose. But I wanted him to be a goblin because, well, everybody loves Labyrinth. So when I made schnoz, the difference between him and the others and why he's so healthy is I went ahead and made a mold and cast him in latex. Now, by the way, this is what latex does when it ages. It turns dark and weird. He's painted in the same method. He's sculpted in the same method. There's just a mold so that I could make him. And unfortunately, while I did get a really good cast off of him, the mold died in process. He is an only one. Otherwise, there would have been a lot of schnoz. He came out very well. I had very few problems, very little bubbling. Again, The method's pretty much the same. I sculpt it. I made a mold with plaster, filled it with the latex, just a thin layer, pulled it out, let it dry, painted it the same way. Boom, mask. Again, same technique. I did this one. Still a mask, still latex. I've just added fur. Now this is one of 2 casts for this one. I do still have the mold, though I'm very certain at this age it is too fragile to use, and it has been exposed to a lot of weather and moisture because it lives in the garage. Because the mold for this mask is this big. It is gigantic. At the time I made it, height of my back issues, I couldn't turn the mold myself. I had to have a couple people help me. But this one, there were 2. There's a painted version, which my cousin has. And then there's this one that I furred to see if it could be done because the ears were ruined. The tips bubbled up. This is where my basis and my knowledge for doing my first fursuit head started out. I can fur something. No problem. I will say this fur is not stitched, but being on latex with hot glue, it's on there really good. It's going to damage stuff if I try and take it off. Not that that would be a problem because I would probably just refur it again. It is a medium quality fur. As you can see, it still sheds. It's the same fur as my original giant tail, which has survived relatively well. But this is not a fursuit head. It's a 3/4 mask, just like Schnoz, and there's no back to it. So all it is just the mask. It also being made of latex and covered in fur, even though I drilled this whole nose area full of holes for more ventilation, and it's all open down here, you can't wear it more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It starts suffocating you really fast. It's very hot. It does not breathe. And it's good visibility. For a fursuiter, that's a great thing, but not enough for you to just be absolutely dying in it, even in an air-conditioned environment. It has to be lower than 40 degrees for me to wear this for any length of time. So, having done this and not been terribly satisfied because I really wanted a proper fursuit head and would really like to use it for a furry walk, I decided I was going to make a fursuit head. At that same time, a couple of my friends wanted fursuit heads as well. Enter mistake number 1. I didn't make a fursuit head for the first time with no knowledge of what I was doing. I made 3 simultaneously. 3. Now one of them is off with its owner, and they wore it to a convention for a little bit because I got it to them there, and they were relatively satisfied, but they also intended to make their own, so that's cool. Run forward. The other friend, this was theirs. It is supposed to have been a cinnamon raccoon. It kind of looks like a raccoon, but it looks a whole heck of a lot more like a panda. Lost a lot of detail to the furring. And this was mine. This was supposed to be a fox. Makes a nicer cat. Anyway, the first mistake was trying to do 3 at a time with a very, very short amount of time before we needed it. So I believe I only gave myself a month and a half for 3 heads at 3 heads before a convention. And the one was made and finished just enough to wear by that convention. These 2 are not fully finished even now. This one's kind of wearable. I have worn it. This one is not. because it has all this cowling and everything going on, and sizing and everything was never finished. So now we know, one at a time to start out. Second thing that I made a mistake. I wanted to save some money because I really didn't have it a lot to use. So, being familiar with the material, I went and got cans of expanding foam. Yep, the old right stuff. And decided to take my foam mannequin heads that I use for display, wrap them in plastic, and build up the foam on top of them, because I thought expanding foam, spray on a couple layers, it poofs up and I can carve it down. Here's where the problem came in. 1. Expanding foam is highly flammable. Not just when it's wet, but you cannot use a hot knife to carve it. We tried that out. Terry took his hot knife to it and it went poof. So that was a no-no. I had to use just regular bread knives and that sort of thing, which is a normal tool when working with foam. A bread knife is a fabulous tool. Mistake number 2. If your expanding foam does not have direct exposure to air, it's not going to cure. It's going to stay sticky and liquidy and really, really gross. And it may actually decide to just ooze its way right on out of where it was sitting. So while on the outside I was getting a lovely surface, on the inside I had goo. And we know how much I love goo. I do not. Especially something, if you've never used expanding foam, if you get it on your hand, it is not coming off easily. And your best chance of getting it off is to get your 100% acetone nail polish remover and dump it on it and dissolve it. Because you're not washing it off. You're just going to stay sticky forever. Remember your nail polish. The next big mistake I did was I did not know how to make a moving jaw, but I really wanted one. And I'm thinking, alright, it just has to touch your chin and have elastic so you can move it up and down. I could not figure out how I was supposed to connect it to the fur around the outside. I'm still thinking on this one. I'll find a tutorial, don't worry. So, yes, they have moving jaws that will not stay lined up where they're supposed to be. In fact, they spring all the way back into there. Isn't that horrifying? So, the other problem with it was this lovely moving jaw, in order to make it move at all, had to hit you against the throat, which became a part of the issue with this one. My friend that I was making this for, a bit tactile, could not stand that pressing against her throat. Can't blame her. For me, my jaw is very long, and the nose and the chin are the same length and everything else is back. For normal people, this is not normally the case. So for me, it's okay. It's like sitting here, except it just didn't move right on mine. The back half in here was going up and down, and the front wasn't going anywhere because there wasn't enough pressure to make it open this way instead of this way. But I did find that if I could put it in position to make it stay there, it does make a pretty cute face. I hit that mark. Okay, cool. I can sculpt a face. I wanted kimono style. Now, for those who don't know the terms, kimono, K-I-M-O-N-O, is Japanese clothing. Kemono, Kemono, K-E-M-O-N-O, is a Japanese style, almost anime-like fursuit. So it'll have great big eyes and a little bitty mouth. And I kind of like that look. It has that really cute look to them. And I wanted to make that. So I made pretty good sized eyes. You know, not bad for kimono because, I mean, look at the size of my actual face. And it had very good visibility for that. And the mouth size isn't horrible. But it ceased to read as a fox. And I didn't want to make the ears too huge because then people, oh, it's a fennec. No, it's not a fennec. It's a vulpus pallida. It's a pale fox. Which pretty much looks just like a red fox, but it's in a ivory-ish color. Which was another problem. I could not get the color I wanted. All I could get was white. But I make do. You know, I can deal with that. No, my sculpt just turned into a cat. And it looked okay in the foam stage, but once the fur went on, it's like, no. The raccoon, because of the stripe pattern and everything, which stripe pattern really didn't define the way it needed to be, it had a very, very distinct shape. It didn't define the way it needed to be because, first of all, the fur was crap. We got this at the craft store, and when I started working with it, it just got thinner and more bare. It was bad. But this one, because of the face, the way it's done, because of the ears, just ended up reading as a panda. Just totally didn't do it. I got the width and everything for the raccoon face okay, but the nose need to be pointier. There were a lot of things there. Sculpt-wise, not a bad thing, but not what I wanted. Now, it is pretty sturdy. It's a good solid head. You're not going to damage it, except for the fur. And on the inside, also not knowing how they do these. First of all, it's not lined. You're going to be able to see all the warts and all. This thing is complicated to put on. As you can see, all these straps, all this padding. Your chin would sit here, your forehead there, top of the head there, that was to keep it from shifting too much. A head strap behind the head, which isn't uncommon, but then I have the straps going clear up to here for the jaw, which is not normal. And I had to pad this up a very special way so it wouldn't press against my nose, and I would still have room for my glasses in here. I can't go without my glasses. No choice, and contacts are not an option for me. So, those glasses have to go in there. Sure, it's ugly. It's unlined, and sometimes that's how some fursuit makers do, and sometimes they don't. Lining them is very nice. It's worth a little extra cost. If you want to get it that way, pay for it. Go ahead if they'll do it. Otherwise, a lot of people just put on a balaclava and shove their head in there, and it's okay. I wanted to go that option so I could take the head covering and wash it. I didn't want it left in there where it's hard to clean. Yeah, it's ugly. It's only semi-functional. It's not great. I can actually put her on. Heaven help me, y'all. Weasel my glasses in here. Now, if I hit this wrong, my glasses get shoved right into my eyes. But, as you can see, the jaw don't work. A little half cattywampus. I actually have very good vision. I am seeing way out, way forward. There's like a little area right here. Downward I can't see. And if I really need to see the ground, I can open up my mouth. Which, by the way, I did get a good choice for a tongue. I love my tongue. It is a pink, sparkly, fuzzy sock. The whimsy works for me. As you can see. And scale-wise, this is pretty big. I'm a very large woman, so it's a very large head. And I didn't much think about that. My friend for this one is not a large woman. Not as large as me. She's almost as tall as me, but she's not as large as me. So that was a bit too much for putting on her. The next mistake I made was in the fur itself. Yes, I ended up with some somewhat crappy fur, and some stuff's pretty good. This is like a a fabric they used to make baby blankets. This was very nice. It does shed a little when you cut it, but this is fully woven in, so it's not going to come off later, and you don't really need to brush it. It stays in that texture, and it was a little stretchy, so I was able to get in here and get these details. This stuff here is crafty. It still sheds a little bit, but it wasn't horrible. It was an okay fur, good for first time in practice. But once you get to the point when you're really wanting to try and make something good, leave it. You don't want it. You want your fur to be able to handle multiple brushings, multiple washings. This stuff cannot be washed. It mats up and it is done for life. It can't be rained on. So that's another problem. You want the best material you can possibly lay hands on at the time to make your fursuits, because otherwise it's going to be bad. I did not know about making duct tape dummy, and to be honest, I do know it now. I've tried it, and with some of the things I do, I probably won't use it, like fitting to areas right on the face. I don't really want to do it that way because I want to actually put the material in, fit it in there, and then trim it to shape. That works best for me. Go with the technique that's good for you. Not everybody's going to do the same. I just noticed my camera started recounting, which means it probably cut on me at some point. We'll find out when I edit. So, this method of mine works usually until I got to doing the ears. Now, I had no trouble at all doing these ears. I was working with smaller pieces and the backs are wide open. With these, I did have a problem. I had a problem that I thought was okay until later on it started to rear its ugly head. And right there's a part of it. See this great big gap? One, the fabric shrinks. I did not know it would do that because I had cheap fabric. So it did its shrinking thing and shortened itself up. I glued it all down, which in itself is usually not a terrible thing. But if you're going to have your head in a hot car a lot, like I do, because I store my things in the car while I'm working in the convention, and when the craft room, Artist Alley closes, I go take my stuff out, pick up my fursuit stuff, and go back in. So this poor thing has to live in the heat of a car most of the day. There's no option for it most of the time. I rarely have a hotel room for any local convention. I drive back and forth. Yeah, the heat didn't do it any favors. It did some shrinking, it did some warping, and it was unhappy. Now, I did have enough good sense to put Velcro back here to close it up, because that was the best way for me to get in and out, because this hangs as a cowl down the back. It is, if I do this, you can see it, basically a mask with a little bit of a hat. It's not a full head. Call it like a, 8 out of 10 head here. 4/5 head. It's mostly there, but once the jaws stop, there's nothing back there. That was another problem I had. Because that made it very heavy toward the front. And while I'm walking, it's sliding forward. And there was nothing I could do to stop it, except for pull it back, and pull it back, and pull it back. And then, I'd overheat. And I needed to breathe a little bit. Well, I can open this up enough. I can stick my whole face out that mouth and get as much air as I need. And I can look at the ground and make sure I'm not going to trip and die or step on anyone's small child. But unfortunately, when I go to do this, it pulls down like this. It makes the problem worse. So those were the issues that I had making that. My other issue, as you can clearly see, are these eyes. And let me bring it really close. I was looking to do follow me eyes, which I kind of did. As you can see, they are buckled and not in there very well. First, this in here is fiberglass window screen. This can be okay to use. You can see through it, it's pretty good. I painted directly on it though. So I had excellent visibility, but the eyes are kind of spotty looking. They're not very clear. I did not know at this time that you need to make this little cup shape to insert into the eye, and then you can stretch your stuff over it and make it fit better. So this is directly onto the foam right there, which is why I have this felt piece. One, she does need to have a little bit of a line around the eye, but this felt piece is also what's holding that in there. It can't be removed for cleaning or anything like that. So anyway, I inserted them wrong. I could have used buckram. It never even occurred to me to use it. I have buckram for making hats. It never occurred to me at all to use that. I went, window screen, yeah, okay. And I painted window screen and stuffed it in there. In hindsight now, yes, I still want to do follow me eyes. I like the way that came out, and it does function somewhat. I do want the big eyes. I may make them even larger depending on the size of the head that I make, or maybe not. Maybe I'll go more realistic. But now I know, make the little cup shape out of whatever you want to make it out of, put your stuff on it, and then slide that baby in there. Maybe put a little Velcro tab in there so I can pull them out and clean the whole thing. Teeth. Great teeth. Sculpey. Notice this loose tooth? Now there's a nail head in there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this tooth right off, because I can. There's a nail. There's Sculpey. The Sculpey didn't quite have the look I want. It's okay. It does have a very old bone look. So if you were doing something like a Scully, where you want it worn looking, this would be fabulous. That's your deal. But I really needed this to be a shiny, neat tooth, and it's not. And they're also in the wrong place, because when I sculpted the mouth, if I put them in here, you can't see them at all from the outside. I needed to make a plate or something here to set the teeth into. Lower ones did okay. I was actually able to set them in properly. But yeah, the top, essentially the teeth are right here. They got tusks. So anyway, those were some of the mistakes that I made initially. There are probably more. Those who are more experienced are probably looking at this going, you should have done this, and this. Yeah, I know. There's a lot more. But these are some of the basics. Stick with the regular rolled foam, something simpler. Don't try to use expandable. You can use it for details and things, or to help fill in a spot, but you can't build the whole thing out of it well. Mine did not turn out well at all. Watch some more tutorials. Make sure you're getting things done correctly. And ask. I didn't know who to ask. It didn't even occur to me to ask. I just went, let's make a thing. Yeah, but I encourage anyone to try and make a fursuit head. At least give it a go. I mean, it can't hurt. Maybe it won't be great, but you'll have tried, and you'll have some pride in what you've made. Give it a go. You'll have a good understanding of it. And if you never make another one again, at least when you go to order one from a fursuit maker, you'll have a clue what's going on, and it'll make your life so much easier, and theirs too. But anyway, there you have it. Mask maker to fursuit maker, and pretty soon I've got proper materials now. I'm going to try and make another fursuit head, but I don't know yet what it's going to be. We'll all find out together. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. If there were any glitches in this, we're going to know when I edit, and sorry about those. Hope I didn't cut anything important. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and visit my Etsy channel. my Etsy page. I've got a few goodies on there for sale, and I would like you to have a chance to lay some hands on stuff since conventions did not happen this year. I will be seeing you next time. Don't forget to hit that bell. Have a great day.